Hello, everybody. I am Drew Duncan. Do not forget that Facebook, Twitter, and Instagram is all at Drew Duncan Radio. Additionally, you can find me on YouTube and Patreon. Simply look for Drew Duncan Radio. And do not forget that I am wherever you're listening to podcasts. Simply tell your device to play Drew Duncan on Spreaker, Google Podcasts, iHeartRadio, CastBox, etc. I am wherever you are listening to podcasts. Simply tell your device to play me. You know, one of the things that I really hate about the Super Bowl is the anticipation for the Super Bowl. And look, I think that it's good that it's 2 weeks out. But you know what is going on this time of year right now because everybody's waiting on the Super Bowl? We're hearing Tom Brady rumors like crazy. You know, we're hearing a lot of things that, you know, we're starting to pick apart these teams. It's all these ins and outs, and it's all this stuff that doesn't even begin to matter. And it's talk about it, until essentially you become nauseated. And I get over it pretty quickly. And so I'm just going to do a Super Bowl preview right now, call it good, and then I am done. You know, if you want to talk about it here and there, whatever, man, I'm willing to drop little nuggets and whatnot. But look, here's the bottom line about what's going on right now in this Super Bowl. Number one, the AFC is not that strong. You had 2-3 really good teams. That was about it. The NFC seemingly was where the, quote, real competition was. But I think maybe the NFC may have got snuffed out as well. You know, I don't know. It's hard to tell. You know, the Seahawks had a lot of injuries. You know, there was questionable coaching decisions. 3 running backs out. They had to go and sign beast mode at the end of the season, a guy who hasn't played all year. And, I don't know. You know, Green Bay had this fake running game. They kept trying to push it down everybody's throat, and it just really wasn't working. And they wanted the threat of the run, which I applauded at the beginning and middle of the season. But after a while, it got to be, okay, at some point, you're going to have to actually have the capability to run the football. And I know what you're thinking right now. Well, Tennessee had the capability to run the football, and they're not in the Super Bowl. Well, no, they're not. But the 49ers have the capability, and they are definitely in the Super Bowl. And so what we're looking at is now pretty much the same game. We're looking at the same game that the Kansas City Chiefs just had with the Tennessee Titans. Very similar offensive styles, very similar schemes, a lot of similar sets, except with the 49ers, you're going to see a lot more fullback. You're going to see tight ends in the backfield acting as a fullback. You're going to see basically a variation of the West Coast offense with the 49ers and the team that can run it down your throat. So with that, is Kansas City automatically prepared to face the San Francisco 49ers? Look at it like this. Didn't the 49ers have 5 first-round draft picks playing defensive line this year? Between Bosa and all these, and Richard Sherman, and, who a lot of people say is overrated, it's just amazing to me that people keep saying so-and-so is overrated, and yet things continue to work in the favor of the ones that people just don't want to believe in. Now, look, me personally, I think that Jimmy Garoppolo is a little overrated. And I think that you're going to have to make Garoppolo play quarterback the same way that ultimately they forced Tennessee to play quarterback with the guy in Tannehill, who I think that outside of Derrick Henry had become one of the darlings, so to speak, of the NFL. But here's the thing, though. He hadn't been there before, and Patrick Mahomes had. Jimmy Garoppolo hasn't necessarily been there before in terms of playing, but remember, he was with the Patriots. Being around winners and being a winner is nothing to Jimmy Garoppolo with that experience, and it's nothing to Patrick Mahomes because of the way he grew up. Dad, baseball player in the MLB, and he was used to being around stars and star-quality athletes, and so he just automatically knows how to carry himself. Look, the bottom line of this football game is going to be real simple to me. The Kansas City Chiefs are going to have to find the short game in order to win. I know that people talk about Mahomes and the ability for this offense to score 7 points in a matter of a couple of minutes. And I realize that having that threat does present a lot of problems for defenses. It takes away your good schemes. We've seen Patrick Mahomes, who seemingly looks good on that knee and ankle that we've all been talking about all season long. But I think they're going to have to find a short game in order to win this game because San Francisco, I believe, has a much better defense than Tennessee. And so going deep is not something that I think they're going to be able to do. I think those seam routes are going to be taken away. I think those deep out routes are going to be taken away. You're going to have to find that short game, whether it's running the football or throwing the football, short out routes, short in routes, 3 and 5 yard step out, button hook patterns, whatever the case is going to be. You're going to have to be willing to play the short game. You're going to have to find some patience with this offense because I'm telling you something right now. Tennessee did such a good job at the beginning of that football game by holding onto the football and wearing down that defense and doing a 9-minute drive and pile driving them right from the get-go with Derrick Henry. And they found a way to sustain. But the run game from Frisco could be a little bit different. Look, I know we saw one running back shine with 215 yards in that NFC Championship game, but they are a little bit more by committee than you would think. And they are not your typical team in the sense in the NFL now that it's a one-back set. They've got an extra blocker in there at tight end. They've got an extra blocker in there at fullback. A fullback that is going to be used in some passing game. Frisco is definitely going to have the patience. It's going to be all about whether or not this Kansas City Chiefs team is willing to find some patience. I want to see short throws over the middle to Travis Kelce for 3 yards. I mean, that's going to have to be the way that you wear down this defense is by nullifying their pass rush, making them go ahead and take the risk of dropping everybody back into coverage, spying Patrick Mahomes. That old 4-1-6 defense, I still believe, is one of the better of all time that we've ever seen in the NFL with the Seattle Seahawks when they ran the hell out of it. And Richard Sherman was a part of that. Kansas City does not have a very good offensive line. And I would be willing, if I was Frisco, to go right on ahead and just bull rush my defensive linemen. Some of the best in the NFL this season. And look, Kansas City, while they may have the ability to fling it all over the place, if you take away their passing game, what do they have left? With Frisco, at least the ability to go to play action is going to be there, regardless of whether or not it's working for them. Because the threat of that run game is going to be there. And it's going to be in the back of the minds of Kansas City. I know that a lot of people are going to say, well, look what they did to Tennessee. Folks, that was one football game. And do not forget that for me, that was more of a revenge game for Kansas City than it was anything else. I mean, I'm not saying getting the Super Bowl wasn't as equally important, if not more so. But what I'm telling you is when you got drummed 35-10 earlier, that stuck in your craw. And when you were down 10-0 early, let me tell you something. That fear was probably there. But, Mahomes showed a lot of leadership. You have to give it to him. But I just don't know if they can compete with this defensive front from San Francisco. They're going to have to figure out a way to nullify that pass rush. And to me, the best way to do it if you're a passing football team is short out routes. Find little holes over the middle in the zone whenever you can. Force that defense up on those short plays, those screen plays. They did a really good job with doing some of that with Tyreek Hill and, running some of those basically almost like shovel pass plays on those reverses. I mean, they did a really good job with that. But they're going to have to do even more than that in order to get where they want to go against this 49ers defense. Because the great thing about those play calls were they kind of found Tennessee lurking in some one-on-one situations. See, when you're in zone, you're looking back in the backfield. And that's why I believe that Frisco's defense is going to be much more difficult to match up with because I think they're going to run a lot more zone against this football team. And if they do that, I think they will find themselves to be far and away much more successful than Tennessee was. Look, the thing I've said about Kansas City ad nauseum over the last few years is that they don't play a complete game of football. And I still have yet to see it. I have yet to see quarter to quarter great football. Yeah, they had 3 really great quarters against Houston. They had a couple of really great quarters against Tennessee. But you're not going to be able to do that against Frisco. You think what happened to Green Bay was an accident? You have another thing coming. Frisco has the complete football team as of the moment. I think if Jimmy Garoppolo gets into a situation where the running game is completely taken away and they find themselves down and he has to play quarterback, that's when we're going to really find out about JimmyG. But if I'm Frisco, I may not come right out of the gate trying to run the football. I might come right out of the gate, throw some play action, take a couple shots downfield, and make the Kansas City Chiefs defense back off a little bit. You know, to hell with that, man. You're not just going to come in here and just try and stop our run game. We're going to show you the threat of the pass early and often. You're going to have to put the football in Jimmy G's hands at some point. I know that he had kind of a Ryan Tannehill game last weekend, and that's great. But ultimately, look what happened to Tannehill. You get enough pressure on the quarterbacks in this game, and it's going to be 50-50. Ultimately, if I was a betting man, look, I am a Broncos fan at heart. And it is really difficult for me to go with Kansas City, to be honest with you. But I think Patrick Mahomes and his ability to scramble around could be the deciding factor in this game, but it won't be. Because I think Frisco's going to be ready for it defensively. I think it's probably a much more low-scoring game than a lot of us are anticipating. But if I was a bet man, I'd probably take Frisco in this game. Like 17-13, 24-17, somewhere in that neighborhood. Kind of a lower-scoring game by today's standards, at least. So there you have it. Guys, I am Drew Duncan. Facebook, Twitter, and Instagram is all at Drew Duncan Radio. Additionally, you can find me on YouTube and Patreon. Simply look for Drew Duncan Radio. And do not forget that I am wherever you are listening to podcasts. Simply tell your device to play Drew Duncan on Spreaker, Google Podcasts, iHeartRadio, Deezer, CastBox, wherever you're listening to podcasts. I am there. And as always, don't you dare touch that dial.